Hi there. So what I'm really here to talk to you about today is about using Google Drawings in the mathematics classroom. Google Drawings is the most natural connection, especially with Google accounts, to blended learning that math teachers can possibly tap into. Is that missing piece there? I'm not saying that all your kids' homework should be on Google Drawings, but I'm saying it is a great way for them to explain their thinking that's a little more novel to the kids and can be more authentic to things that they're going to do in their real world careers in the future. So in Google Drive, you click New, and then More, and then Google Drawing. So go ahead and take a moment to do that. You'll see when it pops up that the screen looks very much like what the screen looks like in a Google Doc or Google Presentation or Google Sheets. The top of the screen looks pretty similar. The drawing symbol is different from the other ones, but otherwise it's the same. You have a spot to give it a title, and it says Untitled Drawing instead of Untitled Document or Untitled Sheet. So I'm just going to call this Lake ESC Math Demo. And you guys could do the same, so go ahead and title your document. Now, let's spend a little bit of time demoing some of the tools that are in here. So let's first start with the stuff that's on the toolbar with icons down there. So obviously we've got Print, Undo, Redo, the Paint Format tool, which I could talk about later, and the Zoom to Fit tool. So what that does is if I'm way zoomed in my screen here, so I'll turn my zoom on here and zoom way in here, I can click that to pop back out to zoom to fit. So that's an option you have there. Down in the bottom, you see these little diagonal lines here. That is for making your drawing space larger. So if you need to make it wider or anything like that, you could drag that out. If you need to make it taller, you could drag that down. Also, if you do File and then Page Setup, you could switch to have a certain page layout. Like you could do inches and make it 8.5 by 11 if you want to, make it look just like a piece of paper if you need to. Okay, so let's go along and try out some of the tools. So first, after the Select tool, which you click back on anytime you need to select stuff instead of creating stuff, there's the Line tool. I'm going to skip over that one because there's some stuff that I want to do with that second. You'll understand why in a second. And I want to talk about the Shape tool. The Shapes tool is pretty obvious how it works, but you click the little down arrow and you can see 4 different sets of shapes. The first one are just shapes. Now, as a math teacher, you see when you look in there that you've got pretty much all the shapes that you will need in math class. Some of them aren't there, that's true, but a lot of things you need. Rectangles, triangles, there's right triangles, there's equilateral triangles, which obviously, depending on how you make them, could be isosceles as well. There are hexagons and octagons and heptagons and all kinds of stuff. Different shapes down here. We've got a couple of the common 3D shapes. Not everything, and I'll show you how to make everything later. But you click on the tool you want. So let's start with a rectangle. Drag it out there. Once you make it, you see you could edit what color it is inside. You could edit what the border is. I'm going to make mine red instead. If I click back on it, I'll bring back up that menu. I could edit how wide the borders are. I could modify what kind of border it has, if it's dotted or dashed or a dot and dash pattern. Okay, and also I can make it not have a border, and I can make it not have a fill. So however you want to do it. So that's the rectangle, which obviously makes squares. If you're on the rectangle and you hold down Shift, it'll only let you make squares. It won't let me make it. I know a square is a rectangle. Sorry, math nerds. But it won't let you make a rectangle that's non-square, non-4 sides congruent. And then there's a whole bunch of other things in there. So let's see. We've also got some 3D shapes. And there you can see that 3D shape, and again, I could choose if it's filled in or not. I could choose what kind of borders it has. I could choose how thick those borders are and things like that. So once you make these shapes, you could also double click in them and type in them so they become text boxes too, which is nice in math class to then label the shapes that you're making and say label this as a rectangle and a quadrilateral or whatever you may want to do. What I'm going to do here is ask you to do some certain tasks. So what I want you to do right now is create a purple rectangle with a thick red border. I want you to create a square that has blue borders and no fill color. I want you to create a cylinder that is green, and I want you to, first of all, don't learn from my spelling here. I want you to also, let's make this a little bit bigger, I want you to also create a scalene, isosceles, and not a spelling teacher, equilateral triangle, and then I want you to try out create something from the arrow menu, create something from the callout menu, and create something from the equation menu. And you can see that if I click down this insert shapes, you can see arrows, callouts, and equations. So try creating different things in there. I'm going to click to correct isosceles here. Go ahead and create those 7 things and then start the video back up after that. Now the last thing I want to show you with these shapes is then once you make them, you can click back on them and resize them as needed. You can rotate them if you need to as well, so that your shapes don't have to be these perfect level shapes. So if you want a cylinder that's on its side, because as we know, sometimes students, when they see things in unfamiliar positions and things like that, they get confused. So it's good to give them opportunities to explore things in unfamiliar positions. We can do that. You can also duplicate or copy them. So I right click, I can click copy, and click paste. And also I think if I just click Command D, it duplicates it. So if I need a whole bunch of that shape for some reason, I could make them. I can click Control Z to get rid of them as well. So the next thing I want to talk about is the line tool. Okay, so here's line. Now obviously making a line is just click, drag, let go, you've made a line. And then just like before, and we'll come back to that. And then underneath that, we also have arrows, so useful in math class to create a line with an arrow on the end. We also have elbow connectors, and what that does, and you see little circles pop up on the shapes, that makes an elbow connector that connects from one shape to another. So if you're making a flow chart or something like that, and you could explore how that works. Let's try that one again. There we go. I drag and then I let go to connect it. So if you needed to connect things with arrows or things like that, there's also a curved connector. So maybe I could drag from here down to here to get put in that arrow. Really nice for math demonstrations too. Students can be demonstrating their learning to you. There's also a curve. So I click and then I click and I click and I click and I click, and you'll understand it as you do it. And then when you want to be done with your curve, you just put an extra click in. So let's say at this spot, I'm going to stop. And then I'm going to click again to stop it, and then it creates it. Okay, and because I have an arrow on, it ends with an arrow. Last tool there is a scribble. Polyline makes different shapes. So I could, if I want to make a weirdly shaped triangle, I click and drag, and then it just keeps going until I want it to stop. And you see it kind of snaps into the end there to make that a shape for me. So if there's a shape missing, you can create it that way. And last is scribble. So if you wanted your students to do handwriting kind of stuff, they could. It seems a little bit silly to give them a computer and ask them to actually use the mouse to write, but it's a possible option. Last thing I want to show you here with the lines is that when you click on them, you can also change the line color, the line thickness, the line style. You could change what the left end looks like. So I'm going to make the left end have a box. It's nice to have this empty circle for when you're doing inequalities, and I can make the end have a different shape as well, and 2 different kinds of arrows or options there too. Now the last thing I want to show you here before we move on to trying out all of these line tools is this text box here. So you see the T with the shape around it. I can create a text box right here to type into. Obviously we know that the rectangles, like I did before, I could type directly into, but a text box just gives me a typing space that's transparent and goes right over top of it. Or I can give it a background color. So let's say I just want this to be gray and type over my stuff. And then you can see I've got all the text tools I normally have in a doc. I've got different fonts, I've got different font sizes, bold, italics, underline, colors. I can align it differently, I could space it differently, I could put a numbered list, a bulleted list, I could tab things. I'm going to add in a numbered list, and this is going to be your list of things that you have to do right now when I stop you in a moment. So the first thing I want you to do is create a thin red dotted line with an arrow on the end. Then next I want you to create a thick blue solid line, as in not dotted, with a circle on each end. And then I would like you to create a snowman using the curve tool. I would like you to create a really rough snowman. I'm not going to look at what you end up making here. Use the curved connector to connect 2 of your shapes from earlier. I would like you to use the polyline tool to create the Superman symbol, the outside of the Superman symbol. and make it a red border, yellow inside. Okay, go ahead, and the video is going to stop in a second. Go ahead and do those 5 things and then continue with the video after that. I'm going to go ahead and clear everything on my drawing here. I'm going to click Control A to highlight all of it, and then I'm going to click Delete and make it go away so I have a new space here. Notice that you have an image option here. Okay, and I can add images by uploading, if I have it saved on my computer, by taking a snapshot if I want to use my webcam, by using a URL if I have a link to an image, by accessing my own albums if I have Google Photos I want to use, by using my Google Drive if I have images saved in there, which is a great way for you to save certain stock images that you'll use regularly in situations like this, or by doing a Google image search. The problem here is when you do this Google image search, you only get images that are labeled for commercial reuse with modification, which we know is not always what we use in education. So what I tend to do, instead of using any of those options, totally could, is I open a new tab. I just do a straight up Google search for what I want. So I'm going to search for a triangular prism because I don't believe that was one of the shape options that were presented to me there. I'm going to switch it over to an image search. It doesn't have to be a Google search. It could be any website out there that I want. And let's say I want this one right here. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to drag it up, assuming you're in Chrome to do this. Drag it up, go to your drawing, drag it in, and release. If you're not in Chrome, that won't work. If you're not in Chrome, you'll want to right-click on it and copy the image, jump back over to your Google Drawing, and paste it in. I really recommend using Chrome, though, if you don't. You don't have to, but I recommend it. So now that I have that shape in there, I can now draw on it. I can now type over it. I can now annotate on it. So if I want to, I can, for example, let's say I want to get a shape and get an equilateral triangle, and I'm going to draw an equilateral triangle right here so that it could be a different color, and I'm going to make it yellow so that it looks highlighted, and then I'm going to double click on it to type in it, and I'm going to label this as the base, and then I'm going to get a text box, and I'm going to put text along this side, and I'm going to label this as the height, and I want it to run exactly along with the line, so I'm going to turn it this way, and I'm going to move it so it's right up against that, and I want it to be really noticeable, so I'm going to highlight that light blue, and I'm going to make it size 30 font. So now I've created my own resource for class. I can also, if I want to, instead label certain measurements on here. Maybe I want to do a line. I'm going to draw it right here. I am going to label, make this be dashed. I'm going to make it 3-point font and delete that there, sorry. I'm going to stick a text box right by this, and I'm going to say this is 6 centimeters. Okay. Now what you might be thinking right now is, ooh, wow, I can create my own resources for my quizzes and my worksheets, and that's great, but I want you to try to push your thinking a little bit further than that. You could then send this resource to your students and say, on this Google Drawing, I want you to show your work and label things as you find the volume or surface area or whatever of this triangular prism, and have them do it right here. So not only are you creating the content, you're using the technology as the vehicle for which the students complete the content, which, as you guys know, makes the students a little bit more authentically engaged in it, and also, if you're doing it right, makes it a little bit more efficient for you to grade because you're not schlepping back and forth this pile of papers to do. So here's what I want you to make right now. And rewatch this if you missed any of these instructions. But what I would like you to do is create, let's see, bring in a picture of a coordinate plane, draw a line for the equation y equals 2x plus 1, if that's above your level. I hope that's not above your level, but if that's above your level, pick a modified activity for yourself, and then label how you know that the slope is 2, label how you know that the y-intercept is 1. You can see this is definitely something you would potentially do for your students. So I'm asking you to bring in that picture. Again, you could either do it by clicking this image button right here and searching for it, or if you have a great coordinate plane that you really like using saved in your Google Drive, you can do it from there. If you have a really great coordinate plane saved on your desktop, you can get it from there, or open a new tab like I did, search for coordinate plane, drag it up and drop it right into here, resize it how you want, and then go ahead and do that. Now, in blended learning really has to be a two-way street of stuff. It has to be not just the teacher providing stuff to the students for the students to do. There has to then be some collaboration between teacher and student, at least to make blended learning really good. So let's say that I was a student and I was creating this triangular prism drawing here, and I had labeled this as the height and this right here as the base. Well, as the teacher, I would want to use this digital platform to provide my student with some feedback that that was actually incorrect. So as the teacher in a Google Drawing, you could click on the text box that you're concerned about. You could click up here on the comment button, which you can see there is a keyboard shortcut if you prefer to use that, and I could say, this is not correct. I don't know, look on page 234 of your textbook. Or something to redirect their thinking and to prompt them to understand what they're doing wrong. Now you can give your students feedback directly on the computer that they could see from wherever they're at. You don't have to give them back a piece of paper. It's there. As soon as you give that feedback, they receive that feedback. So comments is a really great tool. The student can respond to it. The student can also resolve it when they're all done fixing it if they want to. Okay, let's look really quickly at some of the other tools available. I'm not going to go through and have you try them all out. Insert is what we really want to talk about. So we did text box, we did image. Notice you can also insert a chart. So if I wanted to insert a bar graph for the students to reflect on, I can click on that and it leads me through that process. I'll trust you to explore that if you want to. Word art, if you want some fancy size or type text on your screen. There's lines and there's shapes, which we've already talked about. There's also table. So if I'm doing, say, an example of that line on the coordinate plane, I could put in a table and show an XY table for that graph using table right there. So a whole lot of different stuff to explore in there for you. Now the last step of this is, okay, how do I use this with my students? We've got a couple different options. One is that this is just a drawing that your students see. I hope you do more than that in the future, but sometimes that's something you want to use. A great way to facilitate that is to click File and then Download As and select, say, JPEG. And then you have a picture that you could put into another place that's just a picture for them to look at. Okay? This is also a great way for students to handwork into you. Okay, so they create this Google Drawing and then they export it as a picture and submit it to you in Google Classroom if they want to. The other option, just like a Google Doc, is make a copy. So you could make one drawing with just the prompt on it. You could share it as anyone can view, and then you prompt your students to access it and make a copy. And many of you, I saw in the responses to Denise's survey, use Google Classroom. So if you do use Google Classroom, you could post this as an assignment, have it make a copy for each student, and they actually complete the Google Drawing and submit it back to you, and you look through the drawings and actually see a representation of their thinking with labels and with text and with words and with all kinds of stuff that the students bring in there, and hopefully they bring in some really rich stuff for you that way. So your students can make a copy of it, or like I said, you could just put this drawing directly into Google Classroom, have them make their own copy and do the work right there. Now the last thing that I want to show you with Google Drawings is that Google Drawings is also built into a document. Not only can I copy this and paste it into my document, or download this as a picture and add that picture into my document, but there's also a built-in tool just for creating Google Drawings right here. So in this Google Doc, I can click Insert, and right here is Drawing. And it brings up basically a Google Drawing inside of my web page, or inside of my document. You notice that some of the tools are missing, so it's not quite as robust in this format, but you can go through and have students maybe in a Google Doc assignment insert drawings after certain prompts to show their thinking. So I could put in here a triangle, and I could label the hypotenuse, okay? And then when I click Save and Close, there it is in my document, just like a picture, okay, that you could resize, wrap text around, and stuff like that. So you could have them come after certain questions, have them put in there those drawings. I've also, in different instances, had different students respond with different things. So pose the question, show how you know, or show one way to think of 3/5. So you might have one student insert a drawing with a rectangle cut into 3 parts, and then they put their name in it, and then you might have another student insert a drawing where they show 5 circles and 3 of them are colored in. And then you've created this whole thing for all the class to see the different ways of thinking about a different topic right there inside that Google document. And remember, you could also paste in drawings to do the same kind of thing. So That's not all there is to say about Google Drawings. There's certainly more to say, but that's all I have time to say to you. So if you've finished up with this activity and you've got a little bit of extra time, I recommend either A, exploring Google Drawings a little bit more, or B, exploring Edpuzzle a little bit more and setting up your own account so that you could start actually using Edpuzzle yourself in the classroom by recording videos and posting them. Or if you don't know how to record videos, maybe start by setting up Screencastify to do that part of it first. So that's a good option if you're out of time, or if you have extra time. If we're up against the end of the time limit here, you've got a great session coming up about the graphing calculator online, Desmos, and I wonder also, I've never tried it, but I bet you could take a screenshot or save something from the Desmos graphing calculator as an image, bring it into a Google Drawing and do some labeling on it. I'm picturing students graphing things and labeling x-intercepts and y-intercepts and asymptotes and all kinds of cool stuff. Wouldn't that be cool? Well, it was great participating in this today. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you have any questions for me, please feel free to contact me at jamiller@orangecsd.org or jakemillertech@gmail.com or on Twitter @jakemillertech. Thank you so much. Have a great day.